In this video today, I'm looking at this issue of Command Magazine. It is number 10, and it's Alexandros, Conquest and Empire. And this is a very interesting game on Alexander the Great, and it uses an area movement map. It's good sized. And it's got a lot of the charts are right on the map. That's a very good thing. And basically the game plays out in, I think the turns are like seasons. And then it's basically covers the career of Alexander. And there's no stack limitation. You basically have heavy infantry, light infantry, heavy cavalry, and leaders basically are what you have for components. The battles are fought out on a battle board when you do have one, but there are rules for sieges. So some of these areas actually have, places that can be besieged, or things like that where they can be taken control over through siege combat. So you can conquer the area. You can also conquer, the city. And so these are the basic things that happen. The game, basically, Alexander needs to collect victory points. He gets them from each province on the map that he controls. Plus, he has got a number of objectives in this game. And these are kind of historical objectives. If he can capture the Persian family, there's a victory point, an extra one for that. When he solves the Gordian knot, he gets a victory point for that. Establishing Alexandria in what would be called Egypt, he gets a victory point for that. Visiting the temple Oracle of Ammon it's in, I think, Libya on the map, and then killing or capturing Bessus, capturing the Persian treasury. There's also rules for Roxanne. So all of these things are additional victory points in addition to holding territory. So to win a marginal victory, Alexander needs 21 to 25 victory points, and if he gets 26 or more, it's a decisive victory, which isn't what happened in reality. He can also lose immediately. If Alexander is killed, the game's over, the Persians win. And the Macedonians win automatically without finishing the game if they control, every province on the map, except the barbarians and Arabia aren't necessary. So, not likely. I think it's more likely that Alexander gets killed. But anyway, we're going to go to down to the map, and I'm going to show you, the playthrough and the story that came out of my coverage of this game. I wrote about this a long time ago. So anyway, enjoy. So the game opens with the Battle of Granicus in Ionia in about 334 BC. And the Persian army is led here by Memnon, and Alexander and Parmenio are leading the Macedonian army. You see all of that in this picture. The Persians are defeated here, but a small force does escape into the province of Phrygia, which is right to the east of this area in Ionia. And sadly, Parmenio is killed in this battle. That is not a good thing for the Greeks. Memnon is captured. That is good. And he ends up dying in captivity in 333 BC. Then Alexander lays siege to Sardis. You see that right in the middle of Ionia there. And it falls quickly, but since Parmenio is dead, there's no leader left to besiege the other fortress to the southwest. And that, I believe, is Halicarnassus. So that's going to survive at least another season. And then, of course, Alexander's large army is there and it's taxing the province of Iconia, so it becomes depleted because of the usage by the Greek army. And so the Greek army also suffers some attrition. Then eventually the siege at Halicarnassus results in its fall, and it falls under Greek control in the next season. And the Persians just remain stationed in Phrygia. They're being led there by an unknown general, and these are there to provide a little bit of a check to Alexander. And before long, Alexander decides to move into Phrygia to contest the Persians again. And the Persian army attempts evasion, and it fails. So it subsequently fights the battle and is destroyed on the battlefield by Alexander's phalanxes. And then Alexander moves into Gordium, and there he allegedly cuts the Gordian knot with his sword. And you see that pictured in the picture here. In Gordium, you have the Gordian knot, and so they worked that into the game, but those are, represent objectives for Alexander. You also see the Persian king here, Darius, in Assyria, even though Assyria at this time is part of his kingdom, and it's a very fertile area in between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And again, you see, we go back to this picture showing Alexander in Phrygia and in Gordium, and so things are going well right now for Alexander. He's earning his name. Going into the year 333 BC, Alexander is moving his troops. They're on the march again, and now they move through Syria, and he meets a small band of Persian cavalry there. The cavalry try to evade his large army, and they fail, and they are easily overrun by the much larger Macedonian army. So as a result, Alexander lays siege to Tyre, and it's going to take him a little bit of time here because he's going to build a causeway out into the sea, because Tyre is been primarily reduced to a sea-locked island. So it takes about 6 months for Tyre to fall, but it eventually falls to the Macedonians. There's not much in the way of Alexander right now with regard to obstacles, so he decides to just continue marching right on toward Egypt. Meanwhile, Darius III marches from Babylon into Syria, and he attacks some of the Greeks that are there, and these are defeated, so the control of Syria actually reverts back to the Persians. So 333 was kind of an exciting year. In this next picture, we're looking at the year 332 BC. Alexander is in Egypt. He founds Alexandria, and that gives him his second objective in this game. Then he travels onward to the temple of Ammon in Libya, and there he has made that visit, and he now has another objective. So these objectives pull him along somewhat of his historical roots. Meanwhile, the Persian king Darius III is building up his army, and Alexander's men, on the other hand, are suffering the effects of attrition because they're in the depleted provinces of Egypt. So Darius III is taking this opportunity to march into Phrygia, and he destroys some of the Greek armies that are deployed there, while Alexander suffers heavy attritional losses in Egypt. So to address the Persian aggression, as well as his hatred instilled from his father, Alexander marches into the province of Babylon, and he meets the Persian army there and enters battle, and the Persians are defeated, and Alexander also suffers some casualties within his force. And he lays siege to Babylon. And Babylon quickly succumbs to this siege, and the treasury is looted. So Darius III is kind of humiliated by this, and he responds by marching from his position in Syria to Babylon, where he attempts to bring Alexander's forces to battle. And remember, Alexander has been greatly weakened because of his attrition as well as these battles. So he attempts to evade this direct combat, and he is successful. And he is able to retire with his troops into Arabia. We now go into the year 331, and I'm going to show a picture here of what's happening back home. Alexander's army, of course, is suffering heavy losses of attrition because of their, dallying around in the deserts of Arabia. So he marches back into Syria, and Darius III returns to Assyria. And then Alexander makes his way back home, moving into the mountains of Cilicia. And then Darius, meanwhile, reclaims Syria, and the Persian general Mazaeus defeats a small Greek force in Cappadocia. Then the Spartan revolt breaks out in Greece, and the Athenians also revolt, and they are led by Agis. You see that depicted in the picture here, and Agis is this black-colored counter, and he's leading this revolt. So the Macedonian forces manage to evade combat, and they get back into Macedonia. And you see some fairly strong phalanxes there in Macedonia during this revolt. Then in the year 330 BC, Antipater is recruited as a general. You see him in the picture here in the lower left, and he regathers an army of Macedonians, and they go in to attempt to subdue Agis and the Spartans. So the battle's fought out. It's a hard-fought affair, and Antipater is wounded, but he doesn't die. Nonetheless, the Spartans are defeated. Agis is defeated in the city of Athens. It remained in revolt for a while, but Antipater continued to lay siege, and finally Athens is liberated. And that's what you see in the picture. Alexander is still trying to recover his forces from their terrible attritional losses. Pretty much every province that Alexander has visited has become depleted, and the Macedonian army as well has suffered attritional losses because of all of this. So these are difficult to make up, and at least temporarily it's given Darius III somewhat of the upper hand, in my opinion. Then we go to the year 329 BC. The Macedonians are a little bit behind their timeline in their sweep through the Persian Empire. But Ptolemy is received as one of Alexander's generals. He'll later be one of the successors, I think. And Antipater is now free because he put down the Spartan revolt, so he's available for taking care of Persia. So the Persians prepare their defenses as well. They add another leader. In addition to Darius III, they have generous Splitamenes as well as General Mazaeus. So Alexander's forces come into contact with General Mazaeus in Ionia, and in the, basically in Asia Minor here. And the Macedonians prevail in this battle, and Mazaeus is wounded. But that doesn't mean Alexander and the Macedonians got away scot-free. They have heavy losses. But the province of Ionia does return to Greece's control. And then Alexander's army continues marching into Phrygia. It is the winter time, and he does find there some of the remnants of Mazaeus' army, which he had defeated earlier. These try to evade Alexander's large army, but they fail, and so Alexander brings them to battle, and he wipes them out. So now Phrygia is controlled again by the Greeks. In the year 328, unfortunately, Alexander is killed in battle. And the reason for this is that his army was just too small to withstand his nemesis, Darius III. So that kind of goes against what happened historically. And I think that every turn, pretty much every turn, Alexander's army was in a province that he rolled poorly for, and it depleted, and he ended up taking heavy attritional losses, and he just couldn't maintain enough of an army to go the historical route with Darius III and the Persian Empire. He just couldn't rebuild the army fast enough. So basically, in this alternative narrative, Alexander dies, about 5 years ahead of schedule in battle rather than as he did historically from disease. Anyway, that is how this game rolls up. I think it's an okay game, but I will say one thing I didn't like about it is resolving battles on a battle board. I just don't like that system. I wish there would be a more simplified system where that some other ancient systems like Richard Berg's, for example, use to resolve combat. In fact, maybe I would have time someday to try to come up with that for this game. Anyway, a decent game from Command Magazine number 10. I do think that I like the one by GMT better called The Conquerors, or The Conqueror Alexander. It's a GMT game. It was supposed to become a series, but it was the only one in the series, and it never became the series that it was supposed to be. So anyway, that's what I got out of this. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned if you'd like to see more content on historical games.